Good day, ladies, NBs, and etceteras, and welcome to Facts and Features, my series in which I share all the best Hitman knowledge I've gained in my 2,400 hours with the world of assassination. I am your hostess, Cassidy Cope, and today I will be presenting around half of all the facts from each prior episode of this series, making this episode the Facts and Features with the most facts I've ever featured. If you're new to this series and find you like this episode, there's another 15 in the series you can watch later, 8 of which are actually good. If you've seen or are now planning to see those, I've done my best to make this episode worth watching alongside the others. All the facts have been rewritten with new jokes and tangents, and many have been updated with new information or related facts that originally appeared in different episodes. Now, with that out of the way, let us begin. The homing briefcase is one of my favorite weapons in the world of assassination, with it retaining the slow motion that all briefcases had on Hitman 2's launch. Its speed is actually tied to your frame rate, with more frames making it lose speed, so as hardware continues to get better at running Hitman, the briefcase will only get slower, worse as a weapon, and more funny. Perhaps, one day, quantum computers will be able to run a Hitman so fast that the briefcase will stop entirely. Or, if you don't want to wait that long, I'm sure renting the processing power of a big data center will get a lot cheaper when the inevitable AI bust happens. In the meantime, try reducing your settings to see just how slow your PC can make it go. The remote EMP charge, unlockable with a level 10 mastery in Mumbai, has many uses. It can destroy cameras,
Good day.
camera recordings, satellites, keycard locks, RFID locks, viruses and vault locks, and open a window. One commenter pointed out that if someone picks it up, they don't disarm it, so NPCs can be used as vectors to carry the EMP to its target. It gets even more useful if you consider its penetration potential. Walls can't stop the EMP's effect, which can be exploited to save yourself a lot of trouble. This can't be done silent assassin, but if you want to get rid of two NPCs next to each other in the coolest way possible, try shooting them once each in the leg, a second time anywhere else, and then punching them unconscious. This was a lot more feasible in Hitman 2, when you only needed a single shot to the leg, but sadly it's since been weakened, despite it leaving unconscious witnesses. If you want to avoid leaving witnesses but still don't care about Silent Assassin, I recommend trying this. Shoot one person in the leg, garrote the other with a fiber wire, and then garrote the remaining person. And then garrote the remaining person. And then garrote the remaining person. If you want to replicate the special fiber wire animation, I believe it requires pressing the prompt button shortly before it appears, which I tend to do by spamming the melee button while sprinting towards my prey. If you want to do something like this silently, there's a special strategy that calls for the slow motion executive briefcase Mark II. First, throw the homing briefcase at one of them. It travels slowly enough that you have enough time to shoot the second target in the leg and knock them out, but fast enough to incapacitate the first before they can see what's happening. If you do it right and get a little lucky on how your victims ragdoll, you can maintain Silent Assassin. Since the release of Hitman 2016, IOI has drastically changed its stance on how it should implement diegetic music. It was once the case that even if you pause the game, it would continue playing diegetic music, just at a reduced volume. Hitman 2 also did this, but happened to have added some music to the pause menu, which could cause conflicts. Finally, in a departure from the less consistent policy I reported on almost 3 years ago, Hitman 3 now pauses almost all diegetic music while you're in the pause menu, with the only exceptions I'm aware of being music from items that are classed as sound effects, like the sedative gas mine, and the Seeger 300 Advanced, which plays Ave Maria when you're using its scope. These also have the Hitman 2 problem of overlapping music, but you can stop it by changing your sound effects volume to 0 and then raising it back to its normal value. Now the rifle's music is silenced until you reload the level. 47 has a historically bad relationship with poisons, getting himself injected with a toxic syringe by Diana Burnwood, touched with a toxic glove by Diana Burnwood, and a mouthful of toxic champagne from Lashif, finally giving us an answer to the question we've been asking IOI for years. No, Agent 47 has not seen Casino Royale. It also tells us that he ignores Diana's old target biographies that explicitly told him to not trust anything offered by Lashif. Shame on you, 47. You'd think that with all of this established, poison could be safely considered 47's biggest weakness. topping Diana Burnwood, pop culture references, and Mexican wrestlers. But Hitman is weirdly inconsistent about which poisons affect 47. The blue egg item can damage him if dropped, but not emetic devices. We know 47 isn't just immune to rat poison, because if you flood a room with it, he'll die upon prolonged exposure, suggesting 47 is actually uniquely vulnerable to rat poison, a foe he is incapable of beating in a wrestling match. He's also curiously unaffected by the sedative gas mine, which can be triggered by his presence, but cannot harm him. Whether 47 can beat a snail in a wrestling match remains to be seen. No noise can penetrate 2 doors. Explosions and loud gunshot noises have their sound totally muted to anyone outside of the room it was in, or any room connected to that room. Concussive explosives, flashbang objects, and silenced guns, however, only need 1 door to muffle their noise. The Concept 5, an automatic pistol unlockable in Miami, has a special gunshot noise. Except it doesn't. That's how it sounds in Hitman 2, but Hitman 3 changed it to this. Which is a real shame, because I loved the Concept 5's role as an incredibly weird and distinct gun in Hitman 2, a game that really struggled to keep its unlocks distinct amid a million Mark II copies of 2016's items that IOI couldn't even afford to reskin. I will confess that this is the 5th time I've mentioned this in a Facts and Features episode, but I keep doing this because I really want it fixed before Hitman stops getting updates, so I'll likely continue to bring it up. If you don't have a Seeger 300 Ghost to make any car explode in 2 shots, here's a way to do it with the game's better balanced guns. Most cars have a fuel tank in their rear, just below the trunk. If you hit that, it should leak, and shooting the gas pool beneath will make the car explode. I come from a country where it's undesirable to be in public with a large unlicensed firearm, so it's natural to me that the same is true within Hitman, where it gets you spotted much faster and from much further than holding a smaller gun. However, if you hold a small gun while a bigger one is on your back, you're only as suspicious as that smaller gun. The illegal object stored on your back draws 0 attention thanks to the other one that's in your hand. This means that if you're running around with a rifle or sword, the smartest thing you can do is draw your pistol. I wouldn't try to do this in Canada though. I like to poke fun at emetics, but it's not like overpowered items making the game too easy are a recent problem. When New York released for Hitman 2, one of its unlockable items was the electric phone. This could kill whoever answered it with a method that was bizarrely considered an accident kill. It was effectively a skip this target button, which might have not been the worst for some Hitman 2 missions, but halved or eliminated the challenge in others. Thankfully, Hitman 3 fixed the electric phone, albeit bluntly. It was removed from the game entirely. Now, some disagree with IOI's decision here, and for those of you who don't care about maintaining the balance of the game's challenge, here's a method to kill any target so quickly that it barely needs thought, requiring no DLC or special unlocks. Give it a try. It's just as fun and fulfilling as the phone was.
Well, how does it work? Does it work?
There's a lot of points where 47 can blend in. Many of these stop working if you get yourself compromised, but some don't, which is great for a good laugh.
Mr. Jason Walt, please come to the hospital.
Loading, cover me.
Along similar lines is the interaction to scare Soders to death by informing him he's on the naughty list, which prevents you from taking any damage while you're in the cutscene. Yes, you can do this in the Hokkaido Christmas mission where Soders isn't even your target. If 47 uses the workbench in Romania to get a silenced pistol, it forces him to equip it, even if that means putting a large gun he had in his hands in his... You know what? I'm not gonna guess where he's hiding that shotgun. Oh god. Snipers were illegal to carry on your back while wearing guard disguises in Hitman 2016, but Hitman 2 changed this at the same time it introduced a new way to carry them, in your briefcase. Despite this, there's still some strange exceptions. I get why an informal militia would let a high-ranking soldier use his own choice of weapon, even if a point man should absolutely not be using a sniper rifle. But why are typical security guards in the Icon permitted to wield them?
Command, we might have... Hey, don't wave that around.
Hitman 3 added even more, likely intentional, inconsistencies with its maps. Sniper rifles can be legally, openly carried by 47 if he's dressed as an elite guard from Dubai, a biker in Berlin, an Ambrose Island pirate or militia member, Agent Green, but not Agent Montgomery, and Cortazar, the leader of Don Yates' mercenaries, none of whom are allowed to use snipers themselves, not even the designated snipers. Propane is very useful for placing your target's path. Propane is very useful for placing your target's path, so you can shoot it for an accident explosion kill. Really? So you can shoot it for an accident explosion kill. But have you considered that you can also just throw the propane right in front of them and detonate it with a firework? The big one can be unlocked by playing Sapienza, and it creates sparks without bringing any suspicion your way when you use it, making this not just easier and faster, but also safer than simply shooting a canister. Even easier is bringing a tranquilizer gun, shooting your target with it, and then immediately shooting them in the head, which somehow doesn't break Silent Assassin if you do it fast enough. NPCs do not respect trespassing boundaries, nor lock doors, which is why we'll never get a proper prison level, no matter how much people beg.
Oh, Mr. Reaper, I see you don't have your key? Now, you need to go to the Welcome Center and pick it up.
At the very least, this can be exploited if you make the NPC open a door for you, such as by using a coin trail or phone to lead an NPC close enough that they must open the door. If you like to use a little more force when making NPCs open doors for you, you can add a little spice to suit-only runs of Hokkaido to use NPC bodies to open doors.
A weapon.
RFID security isn't very secure because it's agnostic towards the consciousness of the user. The Sanguine fashion show in Paris takes place outside. While most of the level revolves around the interior of the palace, those parts are revolving around a massive courtyard in the center. The show's moody lighting is achieved by blocking the sun with a tarp, which is secured in this tent-like shape. I've recently learned this is actually quite similar to the current temporary chamber of the Canadian House of Commons. This courtyard in the West Block of Parliament had a giant glass roof erected over it to shelter the room below, which has been where the House of Commons has convened since renovations started of its traditional home in the center block. I asked the government for permission to use their much better images here. Canada's weird for not having government photos be in the public domain, but my request was denied due to an objection to Hitman's gun violence. So now I get to use images from visiting official photographers whose governments do release their works into the public domain. If you find yourself to be reliant on lockpicks, you'll find this fact to be very useful. It's possible to shoot faster than intended using a common tech called pause buffering, which, in this context, means pausing in between each shot you fire to shoot faster. This isn't useless for getting yourself out of a jam in combat, but where it really shines is opening doors with what's called a mud shot. If you just repeatedly shoot at a door while pausing in between your shots, you can open almost any door with any gun, finally completing the apotheosis of the ICA-19. If timing your pause buffering is too awkward for you, I'd advise trying out the ICA-19 FA Stealth, unlockable in Colorado, and the DAC X2 Covert, unlockable in Mumbai. Both of these are fully automatic, and therefore capable of opening doors without mudshots, while still remaining relatively quiet and demanding only your pistol slot when you enter the level. If you don't have a melee weapon to silently knock someone out, remember that subduing them can be quite noisy. This is even more true if you want to kill them without a melee weapon. Pistol eliminations are just as loud as the gun you're using them with.
Oh, God, help!
And snapping someone's neck is significantly louder than subduing them. To minimize noise, I recommend first knocking them out using whatever means are available to you, and then using the snap neck button on their unconscious body, which is completely silent. Allowing yourself to be just a little seen trespassing can have its benefits. Skilled players may deliberately allow themselves to be mostly, but not entirely, seen while trespassing, luring the witness NPC to where they could have sworn they saw something. Of course, this can, and is meant to, be triggered accidentally by a player in need of punishment for their risky behavior, but if you simply drop an item when an NPC's line of sight, they'll completely forget about any other distractions. Speaking of agility actions, you've probably noticed that the game stops 47 from carrying his briefcase or any large items in his hands when he climbs onto any ledges or pipes, because the airline charges extra to be able to pack more. And I suppose, within that metaphor I set up, the way you can fly first class is by climbing out a window. In the game, not in a plane. Please refrain from climbing out of plane windows. Anyway, climbing through a window lets you keep the large item in your hands. It might disappear for a moment, but it'll reappear once 47's on land. Use caution when deciding when you'll land though, because if you're going to transfer to a different plane, you might find yourself stranded at an airport with no comfortable options out. The game has a number of concussive explosives that are next to useless, because they have a smaller range and fun factor than normal explosives. They make a loud noise that brings everyone to the people you just knocked out. They don't count as accident knockouts, so the guys you just lured can spot the bodies you just made. And they can't even take out two people facing each other without one of them seeing the other's body in the instant between when the first and second victims are knocked out.
You gotta be kidding me.
In a just world, I'd be telling you about a novel, if niche, use for these explosives. But as we'll discuss many times today, there is no justice in the way Hitman's items are balanced. So I'm instead here to inform you that there's a nearly objectively better option. If you bring a breaching charge inside a briefcase and set it next to a fire extinguisher, you'll have an improvised weapon that can knock out people in accidents, meaning their bodies won't ruin your silent assassin if found. The only downside to this is that fire extinguishers are as loud as a gunshot, whereas concussive explosives are quiet enough to contain their chaos to one room. If you pay attention well in Instinct, you'll notice that guards are highlighted with brighter outlines than their civilian counterparts. This can be useful for spotting the hidden guards around Whittleton Creek, or confirming the identity of assassins in Freelancer. All of the following surfaces will bleed in response to being shot. The hazmat suits in Italy, though not the ones in Patient Zero. The Scarecrow disguise. Janus's funeral robes in the Isle of Scale, but not his Ark Society robes in Wilton Creek. The Plague Doctor disguise. And last but definitely not least, some toilet paper. Janus's house in Wilton Creek has multiple enormous cacti. These were normal size in Hitman 2, but were later blown up by Hitman 3. I thought this might have been patched when IOI mentioned a cactus-related bug in Wilton being fixed by the Bruce Lee update, but Janus's second biology experiment gone horribly wrong remains in the game as of the latest patch. It seems the old man has some interest in propagating them, because as of a bitter pill, Galen Voles is harboring some specimens in his house. When I first covered this in Facts and Features episode 13, I hypothesized that this change in size was caused by Hitman 3's reuse of the cactus asset in Mendoza, where it's about the same size as it now is in Whittleton, but in much more appropriate environments. I can confidently say that this is wrong, as I've since located the asset in Colorado, where it's a completely normal size. So how Janus's cacti got so big is officially beyond me. The Bartholomew Hornswoggle escalation in Haven Island asks you to kill a target with a cannon. To ensure you can't fuck this up, the devs gave you access to unlimited quantities of cannonballs and gunpowder, allowing you to collect as much of each as you like. Unless the game crashes. If you ever need to smuggle an illegal object beyond a frisking checkpoint, here's a really easy way to do it. Checkpoint guards are incapable of seeing almost anything other than you. So if you simply place a briefcase on the ground in front of 47 and then invite a frisk, they'll disregard it and allow you to pick it back up, with its illegal contents ignored. Exercise a little caution though. People outside of the checkpoint might take some interest in your smuggled goods while you're unable to defend them.
Thank you, sir.
A little fun fact, you used to be able to get out of a situation like that. Hitman 2 allowed you to initiate combat during a frisk, but this was removed with the release of Hitman 3. My current theory for why IOI would remove this is that there's no other way to back out of frisk, meaning the only prompt on the screen is to start a fight, which could be interpreted as a QuickTime event by newer players less familiar with Hitman. Strangely, we lost the only way to escape a frisk long after the release of Hitman 2, which took away our ability to accept frisks while carrying legal items.
Hey, you can't take this in here.
If you want to deliberately fuck up a frisk, you better own Hitman 2016 or buy a used copy. Good evening, men, specifically cisgender men, and nobody else. I guess, if you really want to, you can watch this episode of Frauds and Falsehoods, my series in which I keep to myself all of the trade secrets I've obtained in my 2 hours with the world of assassination across Stadia, iOS, MetaQuest 3, and the Nintendo Switch. The first one. I am your wife, Cassidy Cope, and today I'll be presenting exactly one lie, making this episode, the Frauds and Falsehoods, with the most falsehoods I've ever defrauded. The Concept 5, a clip-fed revolver unlockable in Miami, has a generic gunshot noise. That's how it's always sounded. The Concept 5 was one of many useful unlocks I adored that were added by Hitman 2, though I think I prefer that game's other gems, like the Seeker Medic Dart Gun and Electric Phone, the latter of which I have never stopped believing needs to make a comeback. This is the first time I've mentioned this in a Frauds and Falsehoods episode, and I won't ever mention it again, because it should stay exactly the way it is.